Well, thank you for tuning in to see how the math program works at Elkridge Middle School. We want to make sure you're acquainted with several of the elements and the material that we use to teach here. So the first thing that we have is a set of guided notes. We make guided notes for every single one of the topics and lessons. They'll always start with an I can statement. It's really the goal for learning for the day. And then we've got some examples here. We never have to worry about a student writing down the problem incorrectly or maybe not having enough space. We've tried to account for all of those things. There are all these good reminders that make sure that we get all of the details. And then every single set of notes ends with a self-assessment for a student to assess how well they feel like they've learned the material after a basic explanation and maybe doing it as a class or talking about it as a class. And then the next thing that we move on to is there's always an assignment, or generally an assignment, after a set of notes. So let's take a look at what a worksheet looks like. So we've got this worksheet that just practices those skills that they just learned that day. They may have time in class to work on that. If they don't get done, it's generally considered homework. And then on the last problem of every single worksheet, we've got a self-assessment right here. And this I can statement right here is the exact same statement that was on the notes. So they get a chance to assess themselves after we give an explanation. We do a little bit of classroom practice. And they also get a chance to reassess themselves after they've done their own individual practice. And then there's another really important part of the program here at Elkridge. And I'm going to click on this. This is the website that we use to teach all of these and make all of this accessible to students. So it's tinyurl.com/Elkridge Math. So if we go to that website, this is what you'll see. Now, this is a website that I've used for quite a few years. It's got all the material that I use to teach. And you'll notice that right here in the middle of the page, there are all the middle school courses. So you can access each one of them by clicking those links. Or really the best place to go is over here on this left-hand navigation menu. So I'll go ahead and expand each one of those, and you can see that as we pull up each one of those, you'll see each one of the units that we teach in that class, maybe some selected solutions, some basic math helps, and different things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on, let's just click on this one right here. That's an important one in 7th grade. This is equations. So if you take a look on each one of these pages, it's got some important information at the top here, maybe a calendar for the particular quarter we're in. A couple of things that would guide you toward what your student might want to look at in class to make sure that they're staying on track, and you can always check skyward. But we always start each one of these with an I can checklist. That unit I can checklist is a really important part of what we do. You'll notice that we start the material in this unit with an I can checklist and we end with an I can checklist. So you can always use that checklist to kind of keep track of the progress during that particular unit. Let's take a look at how this is structured. There are really no bells and whistles here. It's very, very basic. The first thing you'll notice is a section number and a topic. Then you can click on this. This would be a copy of the notes. So I'm going to click on that. That's going to bring up a PDF that you can print. And then I'm going to come back here. And once you've got the notes, you can always click on this video. And so if somebody was not at school, if they, so let me go ahead and get rid of that so we're not making a bunch of noise here. They can always click on the notes in the video. They can actually get the lesson on their own time. Or let's say that they had a tough day that day and it didn't click while they were in class. They can always pull it up, and you as a parent or some other adult or trusted friend or somebody could pull that up, make sure they know how to do it, and then help them with that. And then of course at the very end here, this is the assignment. So if we click on that, we'd bring up the assignment for that particular concept. So if we come back here again, this is the way it's organized: PDF notes, video that goes along with that set of notes, and then assignment. And the nice thing about these videos is they are tailored to exactly what we teach here at Elkridge Middle School. You don't have to search YouTube to find something that's similar or hope that that particular tutor on YouTube is doing it the same way or something like that. Just designed exactly for what we do here at Elkridge Middle School. So let's go back over to the other material that we use to help students master the concepts. All right, we kind of follow the idea of self-assessing that we have on all of the notes and on the worksheets through to the practice test. So this is an example of a practice test. These are related to all of the things that we would have learned in the unit. And each one of these corresponds to one of those I cans that they assess themselves on as they were going through and learning it. We post the answers to this on our website, along with a video that explains how to do every single problem. So if a student gets stuck, they can look up how to do it, either just looking at the answer sheet that's posted online, or they can actually watch a video with a verbal explanation of how to do each problem. Once they're done correcting that practice test, and we do actually have them physically go through and grade it, they might trade papers or whatever it happens to be. We then want them to complete this I can checklist. So there's some instructions on what we consider each one of these ratings. So a 4 is they can get the process correct every single time. A 3 would be most of the time, so around 80%. If a student is getting 80% or better on a math test, then they probably understand it pretty well. And we have each one of these I cans right here. And again, here's the 0 through 4 rating. And notice that on the 0, it says, I do not really understand the skill yet. We emphasize yet right there. And then it says, check your binder and see if you did the notes in the assignment. So if they did get a 0, there's probably a reason for that. They probably either were not here, didn't get that material, had a bad day, whatever it happened to be. So when they correct the practice test, they then go through, and you'll notice that each one of these I cans has some numbers at the end of it. Each one of these corresponds to a problem number on the practice test. So for this first I can statement, show correct and complete work to solve 1- and 2-step equations. That's problem number 1, 5, 7, and 13 on the practice test. So they can go and look at that, and they can kind of gauge themselves. Okay, if I got all these right, I feel pretty confident giving myself a 4. Maybe if I missed one, depending on the type of mistake, maybe it's a 3 or a 4, and then they can go all the way down to a 0 if they really didn't get any of them correct and really didn't understand that. They then take each one of those ratings. There happen to be 8 of them here, so that would be a total of 32 points. We have them give themselves a raw score out of 32 based on their own self-assessment, and then calculate a percentage score there. They then compare that percentage score with their score on the practice test, so back to the practice test, so they can refer to that and they can really look at that and think, okay, if I think I did really well, does my practice test score match up with the percentage that I rated myself here? We've also got some I can statements down here that are just kind of extra nice things to know. These might be good areas for bonus questions and things like that. These are simply a yes or no. They're not a rating, but they would be really good things. If a student can understand and explain things in this section right here, they're a top-notch student. And then down at the bottom of this is really important. This is why this needs to be done before they take the test. If they take the practice test and then they do this self-assessment and kind of compare their scores as far as their self-rating and then also the score they got on the practice test, we then want them to identify areas that they can improve before they take the test. So if they've rated themselves low, we want them to identify that and physically write that down here. Problem numbers are fine. Short descriptions are better. Just write down something that lets them know, okay, this is what I know I need to focus on overnight so that I can do well on the test tomorrow. Then when they do the test, this is an example of the type of test that would follow that practice test and that I can checklist. And you'll notice, I'm not going to show the entire thing, but it's structured very similarly. The problems are very similar. They are not exactly the same. They might be in a slightly different order, things like that. But then we go through, and when we give a grade to this, we put their final grade right here. We always put that down as a percent, and we say you mastered this percent of the material in this unit, and we always encourage them to look at any work, even if they got a 98%, even if they made a small mistake. We want them to identify that error so that they can improve and master that skill the next time. Now, if they do very poorly on this, if they don't understand it very well, then we definitely want them to engage in the retake process, which requires a corrective that I'll talk about in just a minute. There's another important thing right here. You'll notice there's a place for them to put a name, their period, and then we want them, even before they start taking the test, we want them to realize that how well they do on the test is probably connected to the effort that they gave on that test. So we have them do this is just a self-assessment rating. This is self-reported. What is their level of effort as far as preparation goes for this test in this particular unit? So we have them rate themselves. And what we hope to do is, through all of this assessing and self-assessing, we hope that they realize that if they put more effort in, and they pretty well know when they're putting in a good effort, we're hoping that they see a correlation between their effort, their practice, when they do these I can checklists and these things right here. We're hoping that they see a correlation between all of those things. So once we have that, most of the time when we give tests back, which we aim to do that the very next day, we'll show kind of a general reporting when we clump all of our students together. In this particular test that got reported here, this is an old one. There were 86 students that took the test. It says the mean, median, and mode, which are all different measures of central tendency. We also report a 5-number summary here that paints maybe a better picture. But here's what we basically look at. These students right here went above and beyond. These are 100%ers and more, so they got everything right plus the bonus probably. Here are the A's, here are the B's. This is really good. I mean, if they're in this neighborhood, even if they're an A student, they occasionally get a B, or they're a B student and occasionally get an A. We kind of feel good about this area. We start to worry when we're in the C range, and then we always talk about students down here. This isn't the end of the world. We do have a retake process. There are students that are normally in the A's and the B's that maybe occasionally end up down here. This doesn't feel any good. We emphasize that it doesn't feel any good, and we try and draw relationships between maybe the effort that was put in, maybe identifying a particular problem, whether it was a bad day or whatever it happened to be. So we always want students that are in this neighborhood not dwelling on what they did wrong, but what they can focus on to do right in the future. So that leads us to the disclosure. And I would highly recommend that if you've got a student in our classes, that you go through and read the specific disclosure for their teacher. They're all very, very similar. You'll notice that this is a disclosure addendum. It supports the school-wide disclosure, and there are a couple of things in here that reference the school-wide disclosure. So we would definitely want you to read the school-wide disclosure, and then also the things that in the particular math class that they're in. There are things about class material, the grading structure, how they can go from a regular class to an honors class or stay in an honors class. There are things about practice, how important that is, about the penalty for late work, how they can get around that, how late work is reported. So please go through and read each one of those things. I do want to point out down here, we do have a way for students to retake assessments. Now, depending on the grade they're in, they may be able to retake 4 assessments per quarter, which most of the time in 7th grade, that's all of them each quarter. In 8th grade, a little bit less, there's 3, and in 9th grade, about 2. And what we want to do is we want students to make a good decision. We want them, first of all, prepare well up front so that they get it right the first time. But if they do need to retake it, that they do that wisely, make sure that it's something that's really going to impact their grade and their learning. You'll notice that right here it talks about how many retakes are allowed for that particular class, and that there's a corrective assignment required, and that even if they've missed the deadline for the test, they can always get credit for a late assignment if they turn it in with a corrective. And then again, the goal here is that they're doing the assignments, that they're practicing the skills, and that they master those so that they can do well when they take a test. So on that corrective, again, I won't go through all of this, but this is a detailed explanation of what we want to see. I'll just summarize this twice. Right here it says we need a printout of their math scores from that particular quarter, and then they're going to do or redo any score in that particular unit that's lower than 70%. They're going to complete a corrective for each one of the problems that they missed on the test, and those steps are listed. And then they're going to staple everything together and turn it in the day before they want to retake the assessment. That's to allow the teacher time to go through their corrective assignment, make sure that they've done everything, that they truly have corrected those, and then understand it and can do well the next time around. So I'm going to flip over here to the corrective sheet. The corrective sheet looks like this. The important stuff is up here. These are just spaces to fill in the corrections. So they put their name, they put their period, the deadline for the retake. It's normally 2 weeks after it's handed back, what unit it was, and the title of the test. And all of that will correspond to the practice test, the ICANN checklist for that unit. So there are a lot of resources for that. Again, detailed printout from Skyward of all the math assignments for the current quarter. Complete and redo anything that's less than 70%. Here's the corrective sheet. We want them to do the corrective sheet, and then we want them to put the problem that they missed. We want them to do it the right way, and we want them to show every step. And then we want them to analyze, why did they get the problem wrong in the first place? So give a thoughtful answer to that. And our hope is that they identify, oh, this was the mistake I made. Now I know how to do it right. I'm not going to do this mistake again. And again, stapling all this together along with the original assessment so that the teacher can look at that. Okay, I'm going to flip over here to the next thing we want to look at. One other thing that's available on our website, we basically have the calendar for the entire year. We've taught this for a couple of years now, and we think we have this pretty well dialed in. There may be the occasional assembly that comes up. We had a snow day last year, different things like that. We post these 1 quarter at a time on the website, so you can always refer to that. This is a general calendar for each one of those courses. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 teachers that teach that course, so you always want to check with your student's teacher, check on Skyward, see what's coming up. We're usually pretty good about keeping those updated. We feel really good about the program that we've put together. We feel like it's very robust and gives lots of opportunities for students to learn with lots of support. and things like that. So if you have a question for us, please reach out to your student's math teacher. We'd love to engage with you on that. We've been doing this type of program for about this is the third year now. So we've had some results, and what I'd like you to take a look at is this is our 7th grade average math proficiency for Elk Ridge Middle School. Before we started this program, you can see that the average was fairly consistent. These averages were a little bit below the district and state average of around 50%. The average for these 3 years was about 45%. In the first year of the 7th grade program, we got it to about 54%. And last year in the 7th grade program, we got it to about 65%. So we feel really good about the program that we've put together for the 7th graders for sure. Last year was the first year that we did this for 8th graders. You'll notice for the previous 4 years, the average for these 4 years on the state test was about 39-40%. The average statewide, there's normally a dip in 8th grade for some reason. There's a lot of analysis around that. But it was about 45%. So you can see, again, we're below the district average, or historically have been. Last year, in the first year of the program, we got the proficiency rate to about 54%. So you'll notice that these students that did right here in 7th grade performed at a 54% proficiency level. They maintained that right here. And then these students right here, next year, they're going to move into the 8th grade category, and we hope for the same type of thing. We hope to continue that improvement. The thing that's impressive about this is there's a couple of things. First of all, you notice that there's normally a dip. There was a very large dip this year, a small one this year, 7 point. We're talking, 12 points right there. These students stayed the same, so we avoided that 8th grade dip there. We're hoping that these students do the same thing. And then the other thing that's important here is the results right here that you see. This improvement is the result of 4 different teachers. This year, once we roll this program out to the 9th graders, it will involve actually all 7 teachers in the math department. So we feel really good about the results and the fact that regardless of the teacher that your student has, they're going to get a pretty effective math education. I do want to point out one more thing, and I in the interest of full disclosure, because of the problems with the Questar vendor that did the statewide testing, the RISE testing last year, these results are not verified. We feel pretty good about how we compared. We could see scaled scores, but we could not see proficiency scores and things like that. So this has yet to be validated. They may go down a percentage or two. We don't expect them to go up, to be honest with you. But we hope that we're validated. Either way, even if this goes down a little bit and that went down a little bit, you can see that relative to how things have performed in the past, we feel pretty good about this program. All right, thank you very much. And again, feel free to contact us.